Hello, I'm Rick Anthony, and this is CaregiveraAssist, a monthly series of, by, and for family caregivers, inspired by my own personal experience as a caregiver for my late wife. In each episode, we speak with experts in the various aspects of unpaid family caregiving and with caregivers who are willing to share their journeys with us in the hope that their stories may be of help to others. Today in America, there are an estimated 53 million unpaid family caregivers providing 31 billion hours of care valued at $470 billion. Let me repeat that. 31 billion hours of care valued at $470 billion. Roughly 1 in 4 care for 2 or more people, and nearly a third of caregivers nationwide have been caregiving for 5 years or more, according to the National Alliance for Caregiving and AARP. The average is 2 years. Not only are family caregivers stressed physically and emotionally, but most are not trained to provide the quality care that a loved one usually needs. To fill the need, organizations like Abramson Senior Care offer an array of programs for caregivers and care-dependent adults. With me today is Katie Reilly, Care Advisor for Abramson Senior Care. Kate and I haven't met until today, but I did have a conversation with her several months ago before my wife passed away because I was desperate for information about what was available and what life was likely to be had my wife lived. I don't think I actually came over and visited the center, but you were kind enough to go through at least the first step of the process. Absolutely, and we'll get into that. Let's start by explaining to me the difference between gerontology, in which you now have a PhD. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And a geriatrician. What's the difference between those two?
Sure, that's a question I get asked often. And a geriatrician is a primary care medical doctor who receives specialized training in treating older adults. And a gerontologist is someone who studies aging through many different lenses, physically, cognitively, emotionally, psychosocially, and works to educate and help older people in all of those different modalities.
So the two would work together?
They can, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a gerontologist just wouldn't have that medical component like a geriatrician would. Right. Yeah.
We went to see a geriatrician when we learned that Marlene had, in fact, it was the geriatrician who diagnosed Marlene as having vascular dementia. She looked at some tests and she said, there it is, it's right there. Until then, we didn't know what to call it. Yeah. However, the experience we had really wasn't very good, and I won't go into it, but my wife finally said to her, enough, I'm leaving. Marlene was a stubborn Italian, and that was the end of that.
That's all you did hear, yes.
You focus on dementia.
I do.
For which there is no cure, regrettably, but there are some treatments, some therapeutics, and there are some trials with new medications and so on. Do you see any hope, based on your vantage point, any hope for treatments that are better than what we have now? If not to cure, to at least forestall some of the worst aspects of dementia and Alzheimer's?
I think there certainly is hope. I think there's several different drugs that they're currently having through different phases of trials that they really are hopeful that will be a cure. The current medications that we have, we often call them memory-enhancing medications, and they really just treat the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease in particular. They're best started very, very early in the disease progression to really have the most benefit because they kind of keep people where they are for a set amount of time. But I think that we do have hope. We certainly want to cure. The Alzheimer's Association is another organization that has a lot of clinical trials happening to really combat this.
But you must encounter people like me. I mean, we didn't realize, my family and I didn't realize that Marlene had dementia until it was pretty well along. We were saying, well, we're both getting older, so we forget things, we get a little confused.
Sure.
But then it got to the point where she was just terribly confused and wasn't making any sense at all. And that's when we got really concerned and She ended up in the hospital through the ER a few times because she was really so terribly confused. And we knew there was a serious problem.
Yeah.
And that's when we really started to look into it and finally had to come to grips with she has dementia. And that's scary.
It is very scary, and I think we acknowledge that. We certainly are taking care of the client, but we also want to acknowledge that what the caregiver is going through. And it's scary. There's denial sometimes. There's grief, a lot of grief, as the person continues down their path of their dementia. So Abramson Senior Care, we certainly acknowledge that caregiver dyad, really, and we want to support both with parties. Yeah.
I think just this cancer for years was a scary word. I mean, you didn't like to hear it in conversation. I think now it's dementia.
Absolutely.
Cancer's bad, but dementia in its own way, I think, is even worse.
Absolutely. I would certainly agree to that. You know, there are treatments for cancer. There isn't a very, very effective and long-term treatment for progression of dementia, and it really robs you of your entire self eventually.
It's a terrible, terrible disease.
I agree.
Give us a bit of history on Abramson Senior Care.
Absolutely. So we have been around for close to 160 years.
What?
Yes.
I didn't realize that.
Yes, we're rooted in Jewish values, and the heart of our mission has always been to provide care and support for frail and poor Jewish seniors. But we certainly provide care to all older adults, but that is really the heart of our mission. And we have, over the course of those years, have had long-term care, and now we've really kind of moved into all community-based care, as we spoke about. So many older adults want to age in place in their own homes with support coming to them. But our mission remains the same, to really care for poor and frail Jewish seniors, but we open our arms to just about everybody. Yeah.
I didn't realize it was 100 years old. And did it start as a Jewish nursing home or a home for older people?
In Philadelphia.
Yeah, right.
And then we moved out to a campus in Horsham.
So I didn't realize that was the origin of it.
Yeah, Philadelphia Geriatric.
Yeah. How about that?
Yeah, long time.
You must deal with a lot of people like me when I called you initially. Confused, anxious, and really needing help to try to understand information to know what's going on. How do you get used to that?
So I find that to be one of the most fulfilling and meaningful parts of my work, to talk to a family who doesn't know where to start and really help them unpack the challenges that they're going through and help guide them to either us providing the care or finding them the appropriate resources. And I think that's certainly the essence of Abramson Senior Care as well, to really help families and kind of walk them through that process with a whole lot of empathy and just reassurance that we're going to help them navigate those challenges.
Based on your experience, what is a typical caregiver? What's the profile of a typical caregiver?
So I think it's hard to really profile a typical caregiver because there's just so much diversity in family caregiving, and that can span age cohorts with, our sandwich generation caregivers who have a family of their own and caring for an older loved one. It can span different family relationships, whether it is a spouse, a child, grandchild, family member, other family member, friend, neighbor. It spans socioeconomic status, race, religion, geographic location. But I think the one commonality of all of that is just that all caregivers do need help and support, both for their loved one and themselves. And in Abramson, we really just embrace that uniqueness of the diversity of family caregivers across all demographics.
Well, there was a time, according to my reading, when the typical caregiver was a 49-year-old mother who was taking care of one or two of her parents and, of course, had children as well. Although at 49, I guess the kids were somewhat independent, and had a job as well, a full-time job. And again, according to the numbers I've seen, probably spending 20 or 25 hours a week dedicated to caregiving on top of everything else. I don't know how they do it. I really don't know how they do it without being burned out, which of course is one of the issues that you folks address.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think hearing that profile, the one word that comes to my mind that someone in that situation, and there's so many people in that situation, as you mentioned in the beginning, is what they need is respite, is some sort of respite for themselves so they can be the best caregiver for their loved one, whether that's through home care or that's through someone coming in to relieve them of some of those caregiving responsibilities for a short time, whatever that respite looks like for a caregiver. It's so critical.
What process do you go through to help someone like me determine what help I need? First of all, what knowledge I need, and then what help I need for my wife.
So with the Healthy Brain Program, our Edna Young Gordon Healthy Brain Program, the initial intake call is really where we are going to have a robust conversation with a family member to really learn about their situation, about their loved one, and about what challenges are going on, what their memory loss, how progressed that is, and really see, and almost 9 times out of 10, we are certainly able to help them through the Healthy Brain and Memory Program. But that is really the process. That's where the process begins with our program to help family caregivers.
As it did with us, but again, you must run into this as well. Again, because my wife had been to see so many doctors and was fed up with talking to doctors and not going there again. She was reluctant to participate in the process. And so the best we could do, as I recall, was a telephone interview, which my wife also resisted because she'd been through that before as well. And I think it's fair, it's understandable that she would be fed up with being poked at and asked the same questions over and over and over again.
Absolutely.
We were not unique in that, and you're having to deal with that?
You are unique, but that is something that we do commonly see. A lot of times our clients, and all of our clients do have a varying degree of memory loss, are a bit resistant to come to the program, to engage in the program, and that is something that we are used to dealing with and accustomed to. So we try to, and that initial call is also just used to build rapport with someone, just to get to know them, to kind of help them have more engagement with the program, because it is something that we do come across.
Remember, you don't offer living accommodations for dementia patients.
We do not. That is correct. Yeah, that is correct.
Oh, okay.
But oftentimes we've helped people find those accommodations if needed.
What kind of support do you provide? If we had gone on with the program, what could I and my wife expect by way of support?
So the program is a pretty prescriptive series of evaluations at the Edna Young Gordon Healthy Brain Program. So we start, like I said, that initial call where we build rapport. Our team does a very thorough record review of all of our clients' medical records to get a really good understanding of them. Then we have initial assessments, which we come out to the home to complete, including a home safety evaluation. Because a lot of people that we come across may be living alone, or their family caregiver is living with them, but there's maybe some safety concerns there. Yeah. After that initial piece, we do have neuropsychological testing that as a part of our program, that we will conduct with a client. We have a visit with our medical director, and then I think the final component of the program is really the most important and helpful, because that's where we meet with the family caregiver and the client, whoever wants to be there, and we go over all of our findings, and we explain the diagnosis, if there's a diagnosis that we've come to. And I think also important is we talk about recommendations for how they can manage at home or manage whatever is going on in their lives, and really be helpful practically in daily life.
I think one of the toughest things was the patient, the person with dementia, to help them understand what's going on, help them understand what's happening. And I don't know how you do that. I tried to do it in our case, and it was really a bad experience because of the individual.
Right.
And I said, could you please, with as much finesse as you're capable of, explain what's going on? And she botched it. She started with, well, you know what Alzheimer's is. I said, why would you even start with that? She doesn't have Alzheimer's.
Right.
So why would you use that word?
It's a scary word.
And it just went down from there.
Right.
How do you handle it?
So I think what's important, and we acknowledge this, is that every person is different. So everybody is going to handle that news or that conversation differently. So we look at, how this person is, how far along they are in their disease progression. Sometimes we are very candid and upfront. Sometimes we say, we keep a soft sell and we say there's memory loss here, but we don't identify a diagnosis, because at the end of the day, we're probably not going to take care of that person any differently by naming the diagnosis. And we really like to respect that person's emotional well-being and how they may take that news. So it certainly is a case-by-case basis, but they're tough conversations. But our team is very well-versed in having them when we need to.
You keep referring to we and our team. Who are we and the team?
So our team, we have a medical director who oversees our team at the Healthy Brain Program. Myself as the care advisor, I think of myself as the point person for the program, and I walk families through it. We have a neuropsychologist on our team, and then we consult with a geriatric psychiatrist as well. But we often are working very closely with a client and family and their primary care physician, and they are sort of a part of that, team as well, in a sense. Yeah.
That's a relatively small team. So how many clients, if that's the appropriate word, can you work with?
So we work with quite a few clients. We sometimes have to take a tiny pause to get, clients through the program so we can best meet everybody's needs. But we're always open to taking on new referrals and clients, But it is a small team.
And you have one location for the Memory Center in Bryn Mawr?
In Bryn Mawr, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Are you affiliated with any hospital?
We are not. There's Abramson Senior Care. Yeah.
And you don't provide any clinical services, is that correct?
That is correct. We work very closely with the client's primary care physician. So we like to see ourselves as kind of an adjunct to the primary care doctor. So we may recommend a medication or something of that nature, but we like the primary to really be the one driving that, because they have the most oversight of their medical care. Yeah.
Okay, so let's kind of summarize a little bit. So what are the the benefit to the caregiver particularly, as well as the person who is receiving care, as a result of the relationship with Abramson?
So I think with the Healthy Brain Program, the primary benefit that families come to us looking for is a diagnosis or a second opinion or just more clarity regarding the diagnosis. But what I think is uniquely Abramson and the Healthy Brain Program is how we help people navigate daily life beyond the diagnosis. The whole, my loved one has a diagnosis of dementia, but now what do I do? How do I handle daily life? How do I navigate practical challenges, provide care, ensure safety? So I think that is a really big benefit that is unique to this program. I also think we help caregivers with burnout and support. We have support groups that we offer them, and we also have a pretty newly developed virtual dementia caregiver education uniquely designed for family caregivers. It's a series that we offer every quarter, and I think that's another, education is a big piece of family caregiver.
Okay, so that's certainly helpful for the caregiver to understand what he or she is dealing with. But what specific help do you provide the caregiver? Do you provide training for a caregiver? Because most have not been trained. They are all of a sudden, almost spontaneously overnight, I am now a caregiver.
Yeah. We don't provide any hands-on training, but our education does include things like, how do I communicate with my loved one? What are the best practices for communication? We do some education on best practices to manage daily care, personal care. So we don't provide hands-on training, but we are offering them thought leadership on best approaches. Also, another topic that I think family caregivers in regards to dementia struggle with is when there may be behaviors that are hard to understand and hard to manage. So we offer education on that as well. How to manage behaviors, how to diffuse situations, things like that.
Well, that is so important. And I've talked to other people who were similarly situated to me as I was. And you look back on it and you say, with regret, I wish I had been more tolerant. I wish I understood what she was going through. so that I could have been more understanding. I mean, we all have regrets, but
Sure.
I look back on some of it and say, boy, I was really an idiot. I didn't understand, and I added to her discomfort rather than being of help. And I beat myself up over that. Now, it's only a little over 4 months since she passed, so the experts tell me that it'll get better. But I guess you always look back with some regret.
You do.
What you could have done, should have done.
Absolutely. I think that's with anything. And in hindsight is always 2020. And I think with family caregivers, we always have to acknowledge that we are only human. And as you mentioned earlier, oftentimes we're thrown into a situation without training, without education, like you said, almost overnight. So it is important to acknowledge that there is a lot of difficulty there. But we try to help people kind of think about how to approach it, how to communicate. But it isn't easy.
No, it isn't easy. In my case, and I've mentioned this before, I had been studying dementia and Alzheimer's for 5 years because of a business venture I was involved in. We had a service for caregivers, particularly those who were holding full-time jobs. And I thought I knew something, but until you experience it, you know nothing. You can do all the research in the world, but until you have the experience of getting up in the morning and saying, what is today going to bring?
Yeah.
And then go to bed at night and say, God, I wish it had been a better day. I could have done something. Anyway, I don't want to get maudlin about it, but it's a very real emotional experience that can be wrenching. And I don't know how people who have done it for 5 years, for example, the average, how they did it for 5 years and get through it and still be a reasonably healthy person when they come out on the other end. I just don't understand it.
I agree, and I think there's a lot of uncertainty too. I mean, days can look very different. It's hard to really gauge what may come next as a family caregiver. So it really is. It is very difficult. Yeah.
Of the services that Abramson provides and the litany that you've laid out, particularly for caregivers, in your opinion, based on your experience, what is the most important service you provide that is meaningful and has some purposeful result in terms of the caregiver, how they behave, how they handle it, and so on? Am I making myself clear?
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's hard to pick just one service that is the most meaningful. I think because my passion is dementia care, to me, our Edna Young Gordon Healthy Brain program is incredibly meaningful. And I think the adjuncts to the program, our caregiver education and support groups, all of that, to me is one of our most meaningful offerings because there's so much dementia that we're seeing as population aging continues. And it will, as the number said, it will continue to rise. So I think diagnosis, but also how do I manage post-diagnosis? We are really, really uniquely suited to provide that guidance and care.
Do you provide service support to a caregiver after the loved one has passed during the bereavement grieving period?
So our hospice program would be the best line of business to offer that. I think they offer all hospices offer about 12 to 13 months of bereavement support after a loved one has passed away. So that is integral to a family's grieving process. So that would be a hospice benefit.
Well, you've just introduced a nice segue. You just introduced another topic. We're dealing with only the Abramson Healthy Brain and Dementia Center, which is only one part of Abramson.
Correct.
And could you explain the other parts that are available to your clients?
Absolutely.
At various points of their journey?
Absolutely. So Abramson also offers home care. We offer palliative care, hospice care, as I mentioned. We can provide care management services, and I think we often can also work with other service providers to find that best fit for our clients in terms of what care that they need. Another service we offer is a 24/7 consultative phone line that family caregivers can call. It is free. It is not just for clients or patients of ours, but anyone can call our care advisor line to receive guidance, ask questions. What do I do with this situation? And we often are...
Other than dementia.
Other than dementia, anything relative to aging. And we offer them guidance. My colleagues and I, it's been over 10 years now, our line has been in operation. And we offer support. Sometimes we are setting up our services, but oftentimes we're referring them to other organizations, whatever they need.
Yes.
It really can vary. So that's another really wonderful service that we offer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea how many people, caregivers that is, have gone through the dementia care program?
Oh.
And how long has it been in existence, the dementia care?
Yeah, the Healthy Brain Program. So probably at least over 5 years it has been in existence.
Relatively new.
Yeah, it is relatively new. But I would say over 100 families and clients we have helped thus far.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and continue to look to...
Referral sources. You must have a handy-dandy list of other people who can be of help.
Oh, for sure. We keep a very robust library of referral sources for every different type of need, I think. My colleagues and I are well-versed in care management and things of that nature.
Regrettably, the clock on the wall says we're winding this up. Thank you very much for being here.
My pleasure.
I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And
Thank you, Rick.
again, thank you for your empathy when I called, I guess it was just about a year ago. My guest today has been Katie Reilly, who is a care advisor with Abramson Healthy Brain and Memory Care. Until next time, this is Caregiver Assist. I'm Rick Anthony. Take very good care of yourselves.